All our stories are created for entertainment purposes only.
This all went down just a bit over 2 months ago. I'm 48 years old and my wife is 45. We have 2 sons, aged 21 and 23, and our youngest is a 19-year-old daughter. Throughout our family's journey, my little girl has always been a daddy's girl. I used to pamper her by taking her wherever she wanted and showering her with affection. This continued until she grew into a young woman. Once she hit that point, she started feeling more at ease discussing women-related topics with her mom, and their bond grew stronger. Despite this change, I've maintained a positive relationship with my daughter. As she got closer to her mom, my role shifted. I became more of a father figure, responsible not only for her but also for her older brother's discipline. Her mom became her best friend, and I took on the role of being the parent. They supported each other in everything they did. My wife truly appreciated living in the moment. She loved chatting with our daughter about which guys found her attractive and who she might be interested in. Just typical teenage girl talk, I thought. They were also pretty active on Instagram and Facebook, regularly sharing posts and enjoying reading comments from others. Our daughter had quite the following on Instagram from a young age. People told me it's common for attractive women on platforms like Instagram. As for me, I'm more of an old-school type. I never really got into the whole social media craze. Then, when my daughter turned 17, I was taken aback when I found out she'd been in a relationship since she was 15. My wife had always known about it, and they'd chat about the ups and downs of teenage dating. My wife jokingly called me a dinosaur because I didn't realize this was considered normal for teenagers these days. Over time, I came to terms with it as part of modern teenage life. I didn't want it to create conflicts between my wife, my daughter, and me. But what I couldn't quite accept was the idea of her dating multiple boys at such a young age. That's where I drew the line. They were well aware of my traditional views. In my book, the typical path for a young woman involved dating during college with the intention of finding a life partner, getting married after college, and starting a family, just like how I met my wife. However, my wife had a different perspective. She thought it was normal for young women nowadays to date multiple men at once and choose the right one. I didn't really see eye to eye with this approach, and sometimes I'd accuse her of promoting such behavior. My wife always aligned with our daughter's view on dating, leaving me feeling a bit powerless. Then, when our daughter turned 18, she started dating a guy who was 2 years older and already in college. Fortunately, he was pursuing the same career path as me. As I got to know him better, I was genuinely impressed by his character. That's when I began to rethink my position. Maybe I'd been too stuck in my old school ways. It started to make sense that my daughter and wife's perspective on dating in the modern world had some validity. I decided to take a step back and see how things naturally unfolded. Our daughter began including her boyfriend in our family activities, like outings and outdoor adventures. He quickly became an essential part of our family, and my sons also grew fond of him. He carried himself with the utmost respect and made his genuine intentions toward my daughter crystal clear. His presence gave me hope because many people, including my wife, had been telling me that traditional relationships were no longer the norm. Yet here was this young man, clearly not into casual dating, parties, or drinking. The way they both cared for each other made me think he might love my daughter even more than she loved him. And that was perfectly fine because I understood that many relationships, including the one my wife and I had in our early days, had a similar dynamic. It warmed my heart to see a young man who deeply cared for my daughter and was committed to building a loving relationship, especially as my daughter was about to start college. My wife shared something interesting with me: our daughter's plan to move in with her boyfriend on campus. She thought it made sense financially and would ease the transition since she was familiar with him. While I liked her boyfriend, I strongly disagreed with this idea. I believed it was crucial for our daughter to learn independence and responsibility while at college. I wasn't comfortable with the idea of a young woman living with a man, especially when they weren't engaged or married. So I made sure she moved into a dorm instead of living with her boyfriend on campus. But less than a year later, her boyfriend approached me with intentions to propose to our daughter. I was initially hesitant, but quite impressed with him. It was the first time I knew something about my daughter's relationship before my wife and daughter did. I decided to delay giving my blessing, wanting to discuss it with my wife first. Plus, I didn't want to ruin the surprise her boyfriend had in store. When I talked to my wife about it, she was completely supportive and had nothing but good things to say about him. I also had a conversation with our daughter about her relationship with him, although I didn't reveal his proposal plans. She shared her love for him and her hope to spend her life together with him. Everything seemed to be falling into place, and I was proud of how it was all unfolding. A few days later, I happily gave my blessing for their engagement, and they decided to move in together off campus. I genuinely felt happy for them because their relationship was growing stronger each day. He was a bright, promising young man with a bright future, and it made sense that he wanted to commit to my daughter early on. She had grown into a beautiful young woman, and I couldn't help but notice the attention she received from men as she continued to mature. One day, I overheard my wife on the phone with my daughter discussing another guy. It struck me as unusual, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe I had misunderstood or hadn't caught the entire conversation. So when my daughter hung up, I asked my wife about it. I wanted to know if there were any issues in their relationship. My wife assured me that everything was fine. I wanted to make sure I hadn't misheard, so I questioned my wife further, but she insisted I must have misunderstood. A few days later, I stumbled upon a piece of mail with an unfamiliar sender's name, which piqued my curiosity. This led me to dig deeper, and I found out it was from another man who had sent something to my daughter. She had it sent to our home to keep her fiancé from knowing about this other guy. When I confronted my wife about this situation, she finally confessed that our daughter was secretly dating another guy on the side. I was taken aback by this revelation because I had truly hoped things would work out between her and her fiancé. I tried to comfort myself with the idea that life doesn't always go as planned. Sometimes, despite our best wishes, unexpected things happen. I realized I couldn't control who she fell in love with. Since my daughter had been seeing this other guy for a few months, I assumed she had broken things off with her fiancé. Given how close he and I were and what a gentleman he was, I decided to reach out to him. I wanted to check in on him and see how he was doing. I felt it was important to have a conversation with him, even if their relationship had ended. So I gave him a call, but to my surprise, he had no idea what I was talking about. He appeared completely unaware of any issues in their relationship and was making plans for the future with my daughter. I was baffled by this and relieved I hadn't accidentally spilled the beans. After my talk with my daughter's fiancé, I discussed the matter with my wife. It deeply troubled me that he was the only one in the dark about my daughter dating another man. My wife seemed to believe that it was normal for a young woman in a relationship to have an affair, but I strongly disagreed with that viewpoint. We ended up having a heated argument about it, and it boiled down to the fact that my daughter was still young and exploring her identity. While I understood that aspect, I couldn't help but think it would be fair to let the other man, with whom she had a committed relationship, know about the situation rather than keeping him in the dark and leading him on. Honestly, back then, I was pretty unsure about how to handle the situation, so I thought about just letting it go, hoping it might work itself out. My life was already quite busy, and I didn't want to get completely wrapped up in my daughter's secret relationship and my wife's role in it. A few months later, my daughter's fiancé gave me a call and expressed his concerns about their relationship. He mentioned that my daughter had been acting differently towards him, and I started realizing the gravity of the situation. But I still wasn't sure if it was my place to spill the beans. However, this conversation left a significant impact on me, especially when he described how she was going out partying and sometimes not coming home. Since I knew very little about the other guy and my wife wasn't exactly forthcoming with information, I started worrying about my daughter's safety. That worry pushed me to install a GPS tracker on her car to keep tabs on where she was going. What I found out was that she was still attending school regularly, but she was also frequently visiting a specific location where the other man was staying. When I brought this up with my wife, I was expressing my concern that our daughter was spending time with another man while in a committed relationship. However, her main concern seemed to be that I had tracked our daughter, viewing it as an invasion of her privacy. She accused me of being controlling, which, to be honest, sounded unreasonable to me. My concerns were centered on our daughter's safety. What if something happened to her? What if this other guy posed a threat? These thoughts never seemed to cross my wife's mind. All she seemed to care about was losing our daughter's trust and the perception that I cared more about our daughter's fiancé than her autonomy. I tried explaining to my wife that my primary concern was the potential for violence if the fiancé found out about the situation in the wrong way. I believed it would be better for our daughter to be honest with him about her feelings and the complexity of their relationship. Although I did prefer her to be with her fiancé, I wasn't entirely opposed to her making her own dating choices. However, one thing I couldn't support was her stringing along a good young man. He had done the right thing by coming to me and honestly expressing his intentions. I felt like I would betray him if I allowed my daughter to continue this affair. It was clear that my wife wasn't treating this situation with the seriousness it deserved. So, I decided to have a talk with my daughter about it. She told me she wanted to keep dating her fiancé while also having a connection with the other guy. I gave her an ultimatum, insisting that she needed to be honest with her fiancé about the affair. I believed that starting a relationship with this level of honesty was the right way to go. She argued that he would be heartbroken, and I countered that it was better for him to hear the truth from her rather than someone else. After our conversation, she went to my wife, hoping to convince her to keep me out of her romantic life. I understood her desire for privacy, but I genuinely believed the situation could become dangerous. I knew that when things took a turn for the worse, they would turn to me. Realizing my daughter wasn't going to come clean with her fiancé, I made the tough decision to call him myself and spill the beans. It was a difficult conversation, and he was understandably devastated. I advised him to prioritize his well-being, avoid doing anything reckless, and reminded him that he was still young. He eventually decided to break up with my daughter, which left her heartbroken. Word got out about what I had done, and it was disheartening to see that people were only focusing on the fact that I had exposed my daughter. Nobody seemed concerned about the fact that she had been involved in an affair while in a committed relationship. It makes me reflect on the world we live in, where some people choose to lead lives filled with lies and dishonesty, expecting others to go along with their deceit. I've been patient with my wife's immature behavior, recognizing it as one of her flaws. But it's important to note that she also has many good qualities. She's a devoted wife who continues to cook for me, take care of the household, and keeps our love life active. She's caring, and overall, she's a good partner. We have a deep understanding of each other, which forms a strong foundation for our relationship. As for my daughter's now ex-fiancé, he was a friend to my sons, and this situation provided them with a valuable lesson about not staying in a relationship marked by infidelity. I've raised my boys with strong principles, and they understand the importance of honesty and loyalty. Currently, my wife is giving me the silent treatment, and my daughter has dropped out of college to move back home. She's using this as a way to get back at me, wanting me to see her every day, even though I'd prefer her to be in school. She often cries and raises her voice when I'm around to make sure I hear her distress. My wife, pronounced Naiyi, walks around giving me disapproving looks, blaming me for all these troubles. Despite the tension, my wife still serves me a plate of food after cooking. I'm not overly bothered by the current situation because I believe my daughter will eventually overcome it. She's been posting subtle, negative comments about me on her social media accounts, but I'm not letting it affect me. I plan to have a conversation with her when she stops posting on social media and is ready to talk. I see this as an opportunity to impart some important life lessons to her. It's worth mentioning that I broke up her engagement just 9 weeks ago, so the emotional wounds are still quite fresh. I've faced criticism for my actions, with some people suggesting that I don't care about my daughter's well-being. However, I strongly disagree with this assessment, and there are several reasons why I believe I'm the one who genuinely cares about her well-being. First, I don't even know who this other guy is. He remains in the shadows and hasn't engaged with her parents, which raises concerns about his intentions for my daughter. Second, my daughter is young and beautiful, so I have no doubt she could find another good partner if needed. Lastly, it's crucial to teach her that promiscuous behavior, which my wife seemed to encourage since her early teens, is not the right path. I believe my wife's behavior may indicate a certain inclination toward promiscuity, although I don't think she's having an affair. Instead, I see her as somewhat childish, and perhaps believing that acting like a child helps her stay youthful. These are all factors that drive me to intervene and guide my daughter in the right direction. Story 2. I just discovered my wife is having an affair, and I'm feeling pretty lost about what to do. My wife and I have been together for almost a decade. We've been married for 5 years and have two wonderful daughters, aged 5 and 7. I have a well-paying job, making 6 figures as an engineer, which allows my wife not to work. We live in a spacious 6-bedroom house with a backyard and a swing set. In addition to our family, my wife's mother and 15-year-old sister have been living with us for over 2 years, and I've been supporting them too. Over the past few years, my wife and I have been facing a lot of problems, and our relationship has been falling apart. I could see it happening, so I convinced my wife to join me in marriage counseling. We've been attending sessions nearly every week since April. Neither of us was truly happy, and counseling made me realize the destructive patterns in our behaviors. I was actively working on becoming a better husband and father, and I believed my wife was doing the same. In October, I had to go on a business trip for a few weeks, and a friend tipped me off that my wife was spending a lot of time with a specific guy. I had briefly met this guy in the past and was told he was a friend of my wife's friends, and that was all I knew. It was enough to raise suspicions, and I immediately booked a flight back home when my wife picked me up from the airport. She seemed distant and unenthusiastic about my return. I hadn't mentioned anything about my suspicions to her, only that I had missed her and the kids. Once we got home, she headed straight to bed. I stayed up for a while, and when she was asleep, I decided to check her phone. By the way, a red flag is when your spouse starts keeping their phone with them all the time, even during sleep or in the shower. I found the guy's name and opened up their text messages. She had to raise all the kids. When I checked her cell phone records, I noticed she was sending over 20 text messages to him every day. I woke her up and asked for an explanation. She denied everything, claiming they were just friends and that she deleted the messages because she knew I'd misunderstand. My suspicions kept growing, so I began closely monitoring her cell phone records. It became unbearable for me, and I told her she needed to stop all communication with him. I even confronted the guy politely at his home and asked him to stop talking to my wife. He agreed to stop. My wife started holding resentment towards me because she felt I had ended a perfectly innocent friendship she had with him. She did, however, seem to stop texting and talking to the guy. Nevertheless, I noticed a sudden increase in her data usage, mainly through Facebook messaging. She started keeping her phone even closer and repeatedly denied any communication with the guy. I began feeling paranoid and decided to put it behind me, focusing on becoming a better husband and father. I started being more attentive, helping more with the kids, and getting involved in their daily activities. I reduced my stress about money and minor issues, even doing my own laundry and the kids to help out. I made an effort to be part of what mattered to her and supported her passion for horses. A few years ago, I even bought her a horse and helped her find a job in the equine industry so she could have more self-worth. Now, it's January 15th, and we're going out for a big dinner to celebrate her brother's birthday. Her cousins and friends join us, and we have a great dinner. Afterward, most people, including her, head to the bar next door. I stayed back at the restaurant with one of her cousins when the manager approached me with her phone, asking if I knew who it belonged to. It turned out to be my wife's phone, and when I opened her Facebook app, I found a bunch of messages between them. In these messages, she expressed her love for him and how much she missed him, talking about the scent of him on her jacket that she'd never want to remove. She also calls him my one and only. The messages just keep getting worse, and I can't handle it anymore. Her cousin reads the messages too, and is just as shocked after confronting her and going through all of them. She confesses to me that she had feelings for him, but swears they never had closeness. She insists they only kissed twice. I express my disbelief and tell her I can't trust anything she says. I genuinely believe they didn't have closeness, but I don't reveal that to her. She explains she was with him because of me and the years of neglect she felt from me. It feels like my whole world is falling apart. I'm torn between feeling betrayed, furious, and foolish all at once. I don't want a divorce, but I also don't want to be married to someone who doesn't love me. She says she wants to work through this, but I'm not sure what I want yet. It seems like she's longing to find her own identity and prove that she doesn't need me. I love her, and it's hard to stay angry, but I believe that maybe she'll learn to appreciate what she has by losing it, or at least part of it. What should I do? Edit. Thank you for all the advice. This has been really helpful for me. I just wanted to update you on what I've done since all of this happened. I spoke to a lawyer, and he provided some great advice. At the time, I was staying with a friend, but he told me I needed to go back home. In my state, there's an abandonment clause, and she could claim I deserted her and the kids, which could affect my legal standing. So I'm back home, sleeping in the basement. He also mentioned that I might have enough evidence to prove she committed adultery, which might exempt me from paying alimony. Child support, of course, but not a penny more. He did advise against having any close relations with her, as it could be seen as condoning the affair and weaken my case for adultery. He also told me that he advises his female clients to try and reconnect with their husbands if they cheated on them. Lastly, I've taken steps to protect my assets, opening a new checking account in my name and changing my direct deposit to that account. I've taken some important steps to protect myself financially. I've canceled all our shared credit cards and set up fraud monitoring for our credit. I've also made the tough decision to cut ties with my mother and sister. I consulted with a real estate agent last week, and I'm planning to put my house on the market next month. I've informed them that they'll need to find a new place to live once the house is sold. On a different note, my wife has found a job working for her uncle's moving company, although it doesn't pay much. Perhaps this will help her understand the value of hard work. I also made it clear that I won't be covering the boarding or other expenses for her horse anymore. Additionally, I canceled her gas card, as it was quite expensive to fill up her Lexus X470. As for our kids, I'm doing my best to shield them from our conflicts. I avoid arguing or fighting in front of them, and I make sure they're well taken care of. The silver lining in all of this is that I've come to realize that it's not my fault, and I'm determined to do whatever it takes to work through this. Edit. 8 months later, I'm in a better place emotionally. I've experienced a roller coaster of emotions with ups and downs. At times, I struggled with severe depression and found it hard to get out of bed and go to work. I've had to confront and process a lot of pain and anger. Initially, I wanted to make my wife feel the consequences of her actions, and we agreed on a monthly child support amount higher than what the law required. I felt it was the right thing to do at the time. My lawyer drew up the settlement agreement, and all we needed to do was sign it, understanding our respective obligations. Every month, she found a house to rent about 45 minutes away from the city. It seemed like a good place for our daughters to live, with excellent schools. I knew she couldn't afford such a nice place closer to town, so I thought it was a good choice. Part of the settlement agreement was a provision stating that neither of us could have someone of the opposite sex spend the night when the kids were present. No boyfriends or girlfriends sleeping over when the kids were with us. This provision is pretty common and follows our state's rules. However, within the first week of her moving into the new place, and before we had a chance to sign the agreement, she had her new boyfriend over several nights a week. What infuriated me even more was that she tried to get the kids to lie about it. That really got to me. I had my lawyer withdraw the settlement offer, and I informed her that the new arrangement was I would provide nothing beyond the mandatory child support required by the state. Not a dime more. It took her a while to realize the gravity of her actions, and now she's struggling financially. Don't get me wrong, I ensure the kids have everything they need, food, clothing, toys, and more, but I handle those expenses directly. I don't give her money. She still hasn't found a job. She claims she's looking, but to be honest, I don't care anymore. It's her problem now, not mine. I started doing CrossFit, and it's been a game changer. I'm in the best shape of my life, feeling fantastic and brimming with confidence. As for my personal life, I've met an amazing new woman. I think I'm drawn to her because she's the complete opposite of my ex. She's intelligent, highly successful, beautiful, ambitious, and we get along really well. I'm not rushing into another relationship. I made it crystal clear to her right from the start, and she fully understands our situation and is fine with it. Meeting this new girl marked a turning point for me. Now, I had a friend I could talk to, spend time with, find comfort in, and be close to. It boosted my mood and changed how I felt in general. I was slowly finding happiness once more, and ever since then, things have only improved. I managed to let go of a lot of the anger I held towards my ex. Surprisingly, we actually get along quite well now. We communicate regularly and always prioritize the kids. I'll never forget what she did to me, and I may despise it, but she's still the mother of my children, so it's in everyone's best interest that we have a civil relationship. No, we're not getting back together. I can never and will never trust her again. However, we can be friends and maintain a cordial relationship. Some things, though, I will never be able to forgive. That guy she cheated on me with is definitely one of them. As I told her, I will never accept him or even acknowledge his existence. It would be best, especially for him, if I never saw him again. There's more to the story if anyone is interested. I shared this latest update because someone was curious about how things were progressing. Also, I just wanted to express my gratitude to everyone here who provided me with such valuable advice and support.